Yes, man, I take it one day at a time.
Where's our friend Richard? Is he quietly there or he's joining us shortly?
He'll join us shortly. You know, Richard. Yeah, he's
Okay.
probably on his way to his laptop, so but he'll join us in a short while.
How's the increase in gas price affecting you in
I
your
tell you to
commute?
play the mass. I don't play a song for you. You weren't listening to the lyrics.
Well, you're a super user or a diesel user?
No, well, I normally used premium. Now I'm forced to go to super, which don't really work good for me. It gums up all my injectors and all kind of thing. But I have to survive. I have to, like I tell you, I go one day at a time. I ask the Father to give me the strength for each and every day. I don't ask him for a week and a month, day by day. But what these fellas try to do to the normal man, I tell you, they play in the mass. They like to play mass, you know, Juve and them kind of thing. Mud
Yeah.
up the place. They make things really tough. When I listen to the budget, I've been listening. I don't listen to the budget, you know. That is just a kind of dramatic speech, you know, laced with drama and hours upon hours like a soap opera. You understand? So I listen to the parts that will affect me and people like me, and
Yeah.
I can tell you that budget had nothing in it. Well, let me just say just above one notch of nothing, right? For the
Yeah.
ordinary man. To me, just like the boss said when he won the election the second time around, he said, here up, we on a mission to make the rich richer so they will help the poor. Well, I do. I still try to clarify that in my head what that meant when I know what it means. But if my grandson is to ask me, Grandpa, what did the Prime Minister mean by that? Well, partner, it might have taken me a lengthy speech like the budget to explain to him what it meant. But I know what it means. And that is the kind of services and this kind of governance we are forced to deal with. When you look at what's happening now, I mean, the industrial court stopping the protest. I think the industrial court now on a roll. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You can't get up and say, well, listen, you see, I don't like what's going on the job site, you know. Or let's call in our members and make a stance. Well, but the behavior, the industrial court, I'm not so legally inclined, you know, but the behavior the industrial court tells me, that's the industrial court, you know, tells me that, hello, although come here, no stupid. If they say so, go rock with the flow. Otherwise, don't come here. Here's what
It
it
seems
says.
it seems to underline that the institutions of the state seem to be aligning with the policies of the government.
Yes.
In other words, when you would go to the court for redress,
No.
um,
It
the
doesn't
narrative
exist now.
should be that you will expect that the industrial court is a court that represents the interests of the people first.
Yes.
Well,
That isn't so right now.
you
If
see,
on a
we
Sunday afternoon, Fareed,
country.
if on a
We
Sunday afternoon, Fareed,
yeah.
after 5 on a Sunday afternoon, when some people still trying to get rid of the calaloo and all them nice things they eat on a Sunday, who relaxing on the beach at all these pleasure grounds, people are just chilling out and they hear, well, okay, the teachers are taking a stance tomorrow for this kind of wage problems and all of this. And after 5 on a Sunday afternoon, you hear a release saying that the industrial court Sunday, no.
Yeah.
And they say here what happens. Say all the teachers only better go to work in the morning or else. Well, I think I did a project right now. I'm wondering if I should sell out and get out or just sell out and move to a remote plot like Toko, you know, Rampanalgas. So when nobody don't know me and just chill out.
You
These
see, the terrible thing is, I don't think that the government seems to be on the pulse of where the people lie. They more or less on a mission where they have a vision of where they things ought to go, where Trinidad and Tobago ought to be, and they're operating on a league table effect, meaning that they're saying that all over the world gas prices are on a certain level. All over the world there are certain procurement procedures in place, and they're doing the comparison across the board. They're complying where they choose to comply, and they're not complying where they figure it will affect them because our procurement legislation, and I'm saying that purely in the context of we're looking at what's happening in Tobago now. They're saying that the Watson Duke led Farley Augustine motion PDP. Their position is they assumed office in the THA on the basis of the PNM were nepotistic. They were also looking at the favoritism and the corruption that allegedly exists within the THA. Now, when it is we look at that springboard that Farley and Duke assumed power on, throwing aspersions on the existing PNM and THA and saying that nepotism, favoritism, corruption existed there, and the procurement procedures in order to get contracts were not didn't involve a tendering process. So the PNM-led THA favored contractors, favored people that were more or less within their good graces, and they weren't going through the proper procurement procedure. The Procurement Act or the amendment and what we're looking at now, this bill has never taken gone to the level that it should. So in other words, the bill hasn't become an act, and the oversight as to how money is to be managed and controlled, those policies aren't in place. The regulations aren't in place, and until that is done, then we will continue to have resonating out of the THA the same nuances of nepotism, favoritism, and corruption. Now, if it is we put this budget in some context, the PNM in their political trending, they have not really touched the heart of the people that they're looking after the interests of the poor man. The people who benefit has always been the people on top, and the trickle-down effect that they seem to be living by, meaning that they expect that, once the tide is high and all ships rise to the surface, then the people swimming in the ocean will get something. I cannot see how with this budget, what the poor man could look at and say, well, I've gained.
Nada. Zilch.
What is amazing is the taxi drivers associations, the various heads have spoken, and they said that they're not prepared to increase prices because the bulk of the people who travel with them are public servants and the working class. And if it is they were to increase their prices, they would really scorch the poor man. My thing is, and maybe I'm being the devil's advocate in saying this, maybe they should scorch the poor man. Maybe, and I'm not trying to be to malign them in any way or try to incite any confusion. I'm saying, why should the taxi drivers associations fit the bill in terms of take the lash and take the blow and reduce their profits in order to facilitate the traveling public, when it is the role of the government to alleviate the pain and the stresses of the people?
That's
so
right.
In other words, what Mbert and they and company has failed to do, right, in increasing the gas prices, 4+ times?
5 times.
5 times in total. What Mbert and they have failed to do is to look after the interests of the poor man who's traveling, because food prices have skyrocketed, goods and services are becoming scarce, and if it is affordable, it's at an enhanced rate. So who is looking after the interests of the people? It seems that where we found ourselves now is that the people have to fend for themselves.
Exactly.
The government doesn't seem to be taking the interests of the individual man who's working for a fixed salary. I know when I was in secondary school, the first thing they taught us is when you enter Form 1 is try to get in, work your way, set goals for yourself, and get into a profession, not a job. And the gist of that, as it manifests itself through the years, as we move from Form 1 into upper form, is basically our teachers were telling us, if it is you become an employee, you live with a fixed salary and you have to make that salary work for you.
That's right.
If it is you study and you enter a profession, then the profession itself would work for you. But the thing is, not everybody is blessed to have had the opportunity after you leave secondary school to be able to afford tertiary education on the levels that would afford you to get into a lucrative profession. In other words, study doesn't always take you to the job that you want.
Well, where that is concerned, Farid,
Yeah.
I've been saying for years upon years that the education system is designed to make a lot of people buyers and beggars. When I say that, I mean that I think I mean it's very clear to see that there are lots and lots of children, based on what's going on at their home or whatever the conditions are, they cannot be that academic. Some of them become academic, but you must find out early o'clock as standard one if this child likes to be on the academic side of the life or the vocational side of the life or both, right?
Yeah.
But they have never offered that from the primary school level up. When you reach secondary school, it becomes optional. And if based on what class you're in, sometimes they don't allow you to do vocational studies and stuff. And I think that plays a very important role donkey years now, not now because we're in this situation now. I think that should have been the option the moment you enter primary school. There should, like this SEA thing. That's a waste of time, Instead of having SEA, just say, okay, who want to go NAPS? Who want to go St. Mary's? Best just do that and when children pop their hand, you put them. Because listen to me, there are lots of children who go into secondary school who can't even read. You know what I mean? And those who cannot read and those who will term, I don't like to use them words, illiterate, those are the ones who might have been masters in vocation. But nobody seems to understand that. Or if they pretend they're not understanding because they're trying to create a workforce that will eventually have a massive percentage of the working class as the beggars and the buyers. Now, the beggars and the buyers fall to me. I say that bold, that is I claim in the entirety of that statement. The beggars and the buyers end up doing CPEP and URP and that kind of jobs. You understand? They end up in the class because those jobs are not sustainable enough for you to say, well, I'm going to send my child to do this. That is salary to salary survival. Sometimes they get paid every fortnight. Before the first week is done, trust week started. You understand? So they end up in the credit zone, they're trusting, they're begging until they reach to the next paycheck. And then they're feeling happy. But when they get that paycheck now, half of it going to where your credit, where your trust, where you beg for, and all kind of thing. Next half have to continue handling yourself if you have children, more bacchanal. And when you look at the areas where you have a lot of squatting and all kind of thing, those are the areas they allow to expand. You understand? When you talk about HDC, no real poor man could approach HDC, and that was supposed to be a poor man way of getting some kind of housing. Those things, so I realize they design all these things with this fancy talk to maintain a majority of the working class in a zone where they have total control and they could talk to you how they want. Because anytime you follow that sort of way of going forward, there are differences in the ethnicities, and I'm bold enough to say that.
Yeah.
Because the 1% doesn't, you don't even see, sometimes you see them going to St. Mary's and all kind of thing. After that, you don't know where they're gone, but they end up doing their own business. Their family pass on business to them, all kind of thing. There are other people who making sure that if the children have to eat rice every day till they reach that stage, they will do it. On the other hand, now, what we call the ghetto players, partner, well, pressure there. They're producing bandits, they're producing thieves, they're producing people who will do the lowest of the lowest things based on what they will say. I have to live too, boy. But I have to eat food too, boy. You understand?
We're seeing it when we look at the budget allocation. In 2017-2018, the government allocated $6.4 billion in terms of national security allocations. In 2022-23, it's 5.798 billion. So and when you look at the trend before that, they keep spending more money in national security allocations throughout all the existing budgets. So it means to say, if it is the trend is 5 billion plus every year, it means that we have a national security issue in terms of criminality, in terms of increase in violence, in terms of the citizens engaging in illegal activity. that a sustained budget in terms of national security of $5 billion plus each year is synonymous with the fact that you have people out there who simply not making it, and they're not surviving, so they turn to crime. People don't turn to crime because things good. They turn to crime because things bad.
I told you the systems, Farid, are set up for that. They're not just turning to crime. When you think about it, you have to really like criminal life to say, well, I going into the criminal life, I gonna
So
learn.
getting things as a business, you have to like it.
You understand what I mean? No, the tools of those kind of criminals. Those criminals don't even have a clue as how to get the tools, but they have any tools. Somebody supplying them with the tools. I listened to the Minister of National Security saying boldly that they know thing coming in through the legal ports of entry, sea and air. He said he knows that, So in other words, we know that happening. He didn't say, well, we're going to set up sting operations and we're going to do this and we're going to do that to see if we can mash up this kind of circus. It's happening. The big monies they're putting into national security, trust me, is to maintain that happening.
Right. And to me, it's symbolic. It's the central government making a statement that they're prepared to deal with national security, and they're prepared to pump enough money into it in order to keep it at certain levels. Now, I could agree with that national security is an important tool in ensuring security and stability in the country. But if it is the levels are maintained on that sort of expenditure, the allocations are on that level, then and then you're cutting expenditure in social services, because a lot of these social programs have been, if it is shut down, they're reducing the levels of expenditure in order to keep it viable.
That's right.
So in other words, you're actually showing that the poor man who depends on that sort of support, you're removing his support.
There were things like these camps, and vocational schools.
Yeah, the youth camps, the civilian conservation corps, MILOT.
Yeah, all of a sudden those things don't exist anymore. When you look at communities, the disciplinary arms that were there, as a youth man, I know that in Labre we had Girl Guides, Brownies, Sea Scouts, Boy Scouts, Cubs, Boys Brigade, and all kind of thing. Those entities brought about a level of disciplinary action towards the little fella or little girl. They completely disbanded all of that. They don't encourage nobody to do that, and they just having a time, if you ask me, for read, by impoverishing the people more and more on a daily basis. When you look like you spoke about the taxi driving thing. Okay, so you want to keep raising fuel all the time. People fighting for a salary. You offer them small money for salary, but yours ain't small. You ain't even touching your salary. You have so much perks and so much access to this and that here freely, because you're in control. But you don't want to give this small man an increase to deal with the increases that you implementing. Now, if they pass a law and they say, well, here what happening, fuel going up, but we mandated all the car parts place to cut. Let a man, if a taxi driver come and show you his taxi badge and this and that here, it must have a special price to him. Nobody is thinking about that. Nobody putting that in place. But they hear they say fuel going up, and he laugh, and he carry it up again, and they have a next thing they like to do. They always comparing us with the Caribbean islands. Them Caribbean islands have quarter, not even 5% of what we have. They must have nice beaches and that kind of thing. But if they enhance Tobago and the nice up Trinidad, we'll have more of that than them also. But they comparing us with them. We have oil, pitch, gas, niceness to sustain us. It was put under our feet by the Almighty God, and they take it and they sell it how they want until we hear up. Now let rock so that gas thing I'm talking about, what I'm talking about in the Caribbean it's more than that. In Grenada is more, and in Vietnam it's more. They're going mad for it. Like I tell you, that song I played earlier, you must listen to it. It's Mr. Shack's The Mass. They like to play the mass with people.
Yeah. I'm seeing Richard joining us
Yeah,
now.
Richard is with us now. Richard, come in and
Richard, you change your set. It seems like I wonder if you change country if you're abroad.
Yes, Farid, I am. That's just the truth. I am. And a Spanish tongue today.
Hey,
It's not a bad idea to step away
Venezuela.
from Trinidad for a little while, given that type of budget, given that type of blow to the small man, given that type of wickedness, given given the knowledge that the government knew by increasing gas prices again, this would have been like the straw to break the camel's back.
I tell you.
You know, it's only the poor going to absorb this further. The rich man will add on to make back the money that it's going to cost them in extra fuel. So fuel remains the same for him. Fuel remains the same for him. No difference. So then why come and do this to the small man? Why come and do this to the small man? Is it that somebody hates the small man? Or you want this gap between the rich and the poor to be as wide as a country? Why continue to do this to the small man? People did not elect you, put you in office to tell us for 7 years about the fixing the economy. You cannot fix the economy. No country could fix the economy. You have to manage the economy, and you know that. But you use the economy because you know the average small man knows nothing about the economy. You know, you're campaigning, and you talk about you're going to build plywood factory and boat from Togo to Tobago and all kind of niceties. And when you get in from since 2015 to now, all you talking is fixing the economy. You never told the people in 2015 you're going to spend 7 years talking about fixing an economy. This is abusive. It's wicked. It's insensitive. It's heartless. And the people of Trinidad and Tobago must respond to this. Sorry.
Do you think it's disingenuous of the Minister of Finance, Mr. Imbert, and the cabinet to offer these increases in fuel, meaning removing the subsidies, so much so in quick succession? Do you think that they ought to have been level with the people and said, listen, our position is we're going to remove the subsidies on certain levels, and this is the projection we're making? They should have said this up front, in my view, and said we're going to increase it, because remember, we've had 5 increases. So if they had said to us in 2020 that we're going to stagger the increases over the next 5 years or over the next 2 years, at least mentally and emotionally, people will be prepared for what they're going to deal with. I believe every time they offered an increase, it was a shockwave running through the heart of the man on the street. You know, nobody expected it. So I'm saying, I think it's disingenuous of Mr. Imbert and those around him to offer these increases, to remove the subsidy in such a radical and successive way, without at least forewarning that this is where we're going. Because my position is this: are we looking? This is what, 2 years into its second term. Are we going to be expecting another increase in 2023 and 24, leading into 2025? Because if it is we were to follow the trend, that is where we're heading. I think they should say up front whether we should expect another increase and and as a result another reduction in the subsidy. Because at least mentally, the manufacturing association, the business sector would be able to prepare for this down the road. I didn't expect that we would be looking at a fuel increase and we will be looking at paying the prices we're paying now for gas, which the latest being what, $7.75 for premium, $6.97 for gasoline, which is super, $4.41 for diesel. These are increases that we would not have fathomed 2 years ago. What is your position?
Go on. What is my position? Finish your question. I interrupted you.
Yeah. What is your position in terms of, did you foresee these increases 2 years ago?
No, And I couldn't believe that they were ever going to come back to fuel. This is the fifth time he has increased gas. And when he spoke about nobody in riot yet, he had already done it 3 times, and he had signaled I was going to do it a 4th, and he did it. And then you come back now and you have done it a 5th time. So he's saying there to the people of Trinidad and Tobago is that we are too divided. We are too, how should I say, we lack too much knowledge. We are too laid back. We'll take anything. They could do anything to us. And they also believe we don't have a genuine opposing force to govern the country. And that's why I keep on making a call. We don't need an opposing force for them to do the right thing, whether they believe there's one or not. Right in this government, we have people who could take the lead and change the direction of this country. Appoint one of the 3 ladies who have been calling on the Prime Minister to appoint, like what P.J. Patterson did with Portia Simpson Miller, and give Trinidad and Tobago an opportunity. We have tried Dr. Rowley in 2015. We tried him. We felt he was the best person then. After looking at him for 7 years, he has done nothing differently, nothing of an innovative nature, nothing impressively, nothing that has signaled to us that we can expect something differently. I am personally not sure he is in touch with everything that was presented in the budget. I am not, they interviewed him and I listened to him, and he didn't come across as a person who knew about all those measures. That budget to me passed across as a double cross on the government, a double cross on our party, and a double cross on the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I don't think people should accept that. So today, again, I wish to make another call to appoint Camille Regis Robinson as Prime Minister now, so she could pick a new cabinet and move forward. If you don't want to do that, then choose Penny Beckles so she could pick a new cabinet to help this country move forward. If not, try Karen Nunes Teixeira so she could pick a new cabinet to help this country move forward. But as it is now, it cannot be business as usual. I say to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, this cannot be business as usual.
The Prime Minister has not expressed any sort of word to us that he is prepared to demit office, hand over leadership, or even disembark the political train. He spoke that on the night that they assumed, well, they resumed power for a second time in August in 2020. But his next language, his language down the road wasn't one of he's prepared to do that. He said he will visit that situation and he will let the public know at some point. He hasn't gone that route since. In fact, recently, the last internal election that the PNM had, he resumed his portfolio. Now, the talk on the ground, or not, let me not say the talk on the ground. Before the next election, before the 2025 election, he would have another opportunity to step down and hand over the reins of leadership to someone else. So what you're calling for, it could happen still. The thing is, he cannot hand over leadership of the party in the midst of this term. He has to do it closer to the end of the 5 years. If he hands it over now, let us say he hands it to Camille Robinson Regis, so he hands it to anybody, any other viable person. People quietly say Penny Beckles. We haven't had. You see, the PNM is so tightly knit and so deeply interwoven that you would never find Camille Robinson Regis coming out and challenging him or suggesting that she's prepared to take control. She will never use that language, and you ain't gonna hear that from Penny Beckles. That is not the history of Penny Beckles. So they will be very quiet about it. Nobody will challenge him, and nobody will want to challenge him to their detriment. The last person that may have contemplated that found themselves holding positions outside of the country. So they remain within the PNM fold, but they got ambassadorial posts. And they spent some time in the wilderness, and then they came back in. I would imagine when they came back to Trinidad, they would have been told, you know what happened the last time you challenged. So if you want to be here, be here and be quiet. I have no problem with that. All I'm saying is, I accept your line of reasoning. I'm also looking at his age, and I'm also looking at his state of health. You want a leader that has the sort of vibrant health and the vision of a youthful person who's thinking 20 years down the line. If it is you're dealing with a prime minister who is 75 plus, 20 years down the line he's on the other side. Nobody's going to be holding political office indefinitely when you're looking at that sort of age.
No, I say for 20 years down the road, he'll be 95 then.
Yeah.
If that's what you're saying, yeah, 95. There's no real future there for the country. We gave him a chance. We saw him. I think he deserved it. We have seen what he could do. We are not pleased with what he has done. I think he scraped through in a second term, but none because his numbers dropped, as you saw. And then the people in Tobago told him thereafter, hey, no, we saw enough. That's it. And it was 14-1. And I'm saying before we had to suffer such a national beating. Barack Obama had expressed it differently. A Sri Lankan is what he said when he had gotten it in midterm. Before we had to suffer Sri Lankan come 2025. Why set the party up for that? Why set our hard party and not have so many members who have their aspirations tied to our party? Why set the party up to deliver that type of outcome in 2025? This is irreversible where he's concerned moving towards 2025. The only thing that could help our party move forward now is new leadership. If he stays, the decline is on. He started with 23 in 2015. Last election, he dropped to 22. And in Tobago, he suffered in the THA 14-1 with a party that had just come to life. Brand new party, right? What are you setting the PNM up for? So I'm saying the PNM has done you well. You have done your best for this country. You have been involved at the highest level for over 32, 33 years now. That's a long time in office, you know.
He also
you can be more than 7 years of age when he had taken national office. You can be more than 7 years of age. And look at you today. I mean, still a young man, but you're talking about 33 years or so later, and he's the same man still fighting to hold on to power. No, it seemed to them okay if we were seeing the results and things were happening and that kind of thing and the other, etc. You haven't produced the goods for the country. You are about to spend $500 billion, you know. You have spent the most money in the history of this country as a prime minister. The most amount of money that has ever been spent on that prime minister is this one. And you have the least to show for it. Let me ask you, what stands out in the country after almost $500 billion? An unprecedented number by any other prime minister in terms of money. What has stood out for you to say that he has accomplished?
Well, it's very difficult to tie it down to anything at all. And that says a lot. He hasn't had a flagship project that he could lean on and say, well, this is what I did in 7 years, you know. He hasn't had, he spent the first 5 years saying that, oh, we were in debt, that he was trying to pull the reins on our indebtedness. He was trying to boost foreign investment. He was trying to get the local industry out of a sluggish state. He spoke about improving things and putting things in place to ensure that the gross domestic product increase, that we were able to balance our budget. This was the language of the first term. When he entered the second term, he said that we were at a stable state where now we could now move forward and actually he can do the groundwork or build on the groundwork that they achieved in the first term. So we were sold as a public that we were nearing our wits' end in terms of a country, in terms of money, in terms of wealth, in terms of the machinery needed to move forward. And what the PNM was doing is actually laying the institutional work in place. We went on a whole drive to change so much of the laws. The biggest piece of the legislation or legislative work that he has not achieved, and there's been a public outcry for it, is the procurement legislation. We have seen all the corruption that the PNM came into power exposing and saying what the previous government has done. They haven't put that Procurement Act in place yet and put its regulations in place to actually ensure that allegations of a similar nature aren't raised on them down the road. And the Manufacturers Association and so many of the national stakeholders have come out and criticized them for the same. So the legislative work that Faris Alwari went on, and he was boasting about how we amended the laws in so many different areas, and we changed this and changed that, and we brought our legislation in tune with international settled practice. We haven't done we haven't implemented the key change in our expenditure policies. When we look at Tobago, right, Richard, when you look at Tobago, the audit report, the 90-page audit report that Fali Augustine recently referred to, when he indicated that the Caribbean Institute of Forensic Auditing for in its 9th sitting were able to detect certain things. They were saying that Tobago spent $206 million on 80 roads. And when they examined randomly, they looked at 21 out of the 80 roads. They said that of the 21 roads visited, Augustine said there was no evidence of any work started or in progress at 11 of them. So, he's saying that there were completion certificates associated with these. So basically what Fali is saying is you spent $206 million plus on 80 roads. When the audit report was completed and they randomly look at 21, which is 1/4 of the 80, you have certificates of completion that these roads were completed. But yet still, when you examine the roads, there were 11 of the 21, not even, though they have certificates of completion, there was not even work started on some of them. So how could you be paid for completing roadworks in its entirety, paid for that having been done, and the work hasn't even started? So people get paid before the work starts. So Fali was exposing, he's saying that, oh, this is what happened under the THA led the PNM. If the procurement legislation was passed, this current THA executive now would be held to account for how their expenditure goes. They're spending right now $306 million to prepare roads in Tobago, and the allocation of the contracts have been chiefly in the hands of local contractors, and local meaning Trini contractors. When Watson Duke and the PDP offered themselves to the Tobago public, they were basically saying that they want to offer Tobago people more opportunity. So the local contractors in Tobago were told that they would be given greater opportunity, more of a say, greater consideration. Not that they were going to favor them, but they were going to include them in the process where they would be given an opportunity to compete in getting contracts. This fall off between the leader of the PDP and the chief secretary, it's unprecedented in terms of Tobago history. It has national implications in terms of the PDP's trust to offer themselves as a third party in Trinidad, or third party in the national elections coming forward in 2025. It's all a show of, we don't have policies in place that the people on the ground could trust. Who do we trust? We have a central government in power who is not passing legislation that is key to eroding any aspersion being cast against its character and its name. Yes, legislation is being changed, but legislation on what level? What oversight legislation has been put in place to control how the expenditure is going? So people now are being deluded into thinking that, we will have a difference moving forward, when what we really have is a reciprocation and a replication of old policies using different personnel. In looking at your question, I think that the Prime Minister, his heart is in the right place, because some of the changes in terms of removing subsidies might be synonymous with where things go internationally. But in order to increase gas prices and in order to remove subsidies, you must have certain other things in place that are up and functional. When it is you travel to England and you travel to New York and you travel around the world, I'm sure you would recognize that the public transport system in those countries are reliable, they are efficient, and they're functional. We cannot have increases in gas prices and the poor man having to access public transport and private transport, because you're depending on PH drivers, you're depending on registered hire taxis, but the public transport that is subsidized by the state, the government buses, those routed buses and the routes that they travel, we still don't have buses that take you up to Laventille Hill, you know. We don't have buses that take you all the way into the remote places of Toko and the remote places in South. You may have buses that take you on certain routes. Now, the time that manifests itself is when a crime takes place and you hear 3 women die for the week and they were last seen in a PH car going somewhere. So what I'm saying, Richard, is if it is you want to increase gas prices, if you want the poor man to take that kind of licking, you must have your state institutions up and functioning that you could actually cushion the blow that they're going to get. But we don't have public transport up and efficient and running. Look at the ferry system from San Fernando into Port of Spain. Under the previous administration, there were rumors that they were going to do it to Point Fortin into Port of Spain. The PNM-led central government between 2015 and now hasn't hinted to the people in South Trinidad or Central Trinidad that they're going to be introducing a ferry service to at least alleviate that journey that they'll be taking from Port of Spain into Central, from Port of Spain into South, into deeper South. So who's going to bear the brunt of these gas increases? The taxi drivers associations are saying to themselves and they're saying to the public that they're not going to increase because they are mindful that it's public servants and the poor people that are making use of the transportation facilities that they're providing. But they're probably doing that in an effort to survive. I cannot see what central government is thinking and where their thinking processes lie at this stage with these gas increases. They haven't mapped out a plan for you and me. They haven't mapped out a plan where they're saying, listen, we're increasing the gas prices. We are aware that you're going to be facing increased prices and that burden will be carried by you. But this is what we're offering as alternative. We're going to increase the ferry service, make it key areas, Central and South Trinidad is going to be serviced now. The cost is going to be at this level. That will serve to keep the gas emissions down, to keep us in tune with our climate control commitments internationally. It's going to also limit the amount of traffic that we'll have on the road. So at least the people will see some benefit. We'll have with increased ferry service, with increased public transport service, the people would be benefiting in some way, and the country as a whole will be functioning in keeping with international global policies. But we're not seeing that synergy taking place. What is your view in that regard?
Well, what I could tell you, you said that the Prime Minister's heart is in the right place. I don't know, and while I know that is nice to say, I can't say that I could embrace that fully. I think it's a nice thing to say. But how could your heart be in the correct place when you said, the world, happening now is happening in other parts of the world? You said that. Other parts of the world. And perhaps, we too have to adjust our situation because it's happening in other parts of the world. But here happening in other parts of the world too. First of all, you can't reference Barbados or any Guyana. The same Prime Minister would tell you he don't want to hear that, he lives in Trinidad and Tobago. But then the same Prime Minister would want to tell you that what's happening in other parts of the world. Then why should I want to listen about what is happening, listen to what is happening in other parts of the world? When I try to compare us with other parts of the world, you don't want to hear that. But because this one suits you, you want to raise that. That's the Prime Minister, Yeah. But he doesn't come out and say everything else that's happening in other parts of the world. In other parts of the world, they raise gas. They raise the price of gas. And the people rioted. They throw people out. You know that. Is in this country and all Sri Lanka would have a lot of problems there. You know that. Look, the president of Guyana, of Brazil, the president of Brazil. I think he probably won back the election by now. I haven't followed it since, but listen to one of his speeches, beautiful speech, where he said, Brazil above everything and God above all else, right? he reminded the people in the face of increasing gas prices. You know, he did. He cut it. He said, I freed Brazil from that. He cut gas prices, you know. He said the cost of living, he cut it. And he was the major front runner at the time. I don't know how the election panned out, but I mean, you listen to the crowd roar. In Brazil is a part of the world now, and Brazil it doesn't have the same ratio as we do in the context of us being an energy based economy, and we only dealing with 1.4 million people, but Brazil dealing with so many more people, and yet still they can manage their affairs. I would say Trinidad and Tobago, while Brazil is known to be one of the, I think they call them the Asian tigers or some, they kind of grouping them into that, and doing well. Trinidad and Tobago has always been an emerging economy and doing well. How come we cannot do like what Brazil did? Or if we have to compare everything internationally, then why the people of this country is hesitating to take to the streets and express how they really feel, as they have done in other countries, to poor management, to poor governance, and get them and get their message out. So the transport system, you will know that the Prime Minister knew or ought to have known that when they were raising gas prices, as you have said, we don't have a proper functioning transportation system. You spoke about PH and all these other types of things and so on. I know that the Prime Minister knew about these things. You know the Prime Minister know how people get to the top of Laventille. You just said that. You just say no buses go to the top of Laventille. You don't think the Prime Minister know that? He don't know it have people living at the top of Laventille. He don't know it have people living at the top of Laventille who have to make their way down to get a job, to earn a living, to take care of their family, and then go back up the hill to sleep. He doesn't know that. And then you increase gas prices to tell them get home however they could. Make out however you could. You ain't put no bus to go up the hill. You ain't improved the transportation system. You did nothing to offset the blow to the small man. To say, well, we had to raise the gas prices again. The subsidy is too high. But here what we have done in the meantime to take the pressure off the poor and the vulnerable. Buses will now be going up at Laventille. Mini buses, whatever kind. Subsidized buses. This, that, the other. The buses will be running every hour, 2 buses per hour. Whatever. Yeah. You haven't done that. You left it just as it is. And then you say to the people, you would hang however you swing. But this is what we're doing. In a most insensitive and uncaring and disrespectful way to the people of Laventille, to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And you have done nothing after having spent so much money. If you couldn't do it before, why should we believe you will do something now? The trajectory does not look good. He is not the person to take us any further into the future. We need to make the required adjustment now and put someone else in office who could start to steer the country in a different direction. So come 2025, people would have a reading on that person to know, well, what they did, what needed to be improved, what they did good, what they need to sustain, and that kind of thing. But what you could do with this gentleman? What could you do with this gentleman? So for me to say his heart is in the right place would be a very nice thing to say. I don't know that it is not in the right place, but I cannot say it is in the right place.
Let me add something else to the equation. Do you know that they remove, or maybe we could stress, that commute from Trinidad and into Tobago and vice versa? Now the pensioners who used to have a free ticket into Tobago, they now have to pay $50 return.
Yeah.
So yeah. That flew over my head. I don't understand. If it is he's coming to tell me that when he looks at the commute, when they do an audit of the people that commute between Trinidad and Tobago and vice versa, they're looking at the pensioners have been abusing the freeness, and they've been and so much money is being lost in covering it, subsidizing the cost to get the pensioners to and from Tobago, that he has to pull the reins on that and stop it now. What is the empirical data? He hasn't provided, central government hasn't provided any empirical data for adding a value to that transport that the pensioners had to pay. between and to and from Tobago, you added a $50 cost, not a $25 cost. Remember, it was zero. You could travel back and forth from Tobago as a pensioner for free. To add $50 onto that now, when it was zero, if you tell me 25, I could understand. Well, all right. Not that I will condone it, but I could say, well, it's a $25 increase. It's nominal. But I don't think $50 is nominal when it is, we're looking at the increased food prices, increased fuel prices. So the association that speaks on behalf of retired people and the aging public came out and they said, what about the mental health of and the self-awareness that older people got when it is they had to travel back and forth from Tobago, when they Trinidadians who want to go to Tobago and relax for the day at that age, they want to enjoy their retirement. That service that the state was providing was an important service, given their age, given the fact that they get a chance to go and relax. I don't want to put it like this, but I'm putting it anyhow. Trinidad is not exactly the place you could walk about freely as an elderly person or as an aging person in the streets and feel as secure as you would feel when you're in Tobago. Tobago is a different atmosphere. You feel, some of my friends tell me when I go to Tobago and I walk through Scarborough, I feel like I'm in a different country. And it's simply the alluding to the fact that, I don't have to worry that somebody going to grab my bag, somebody going to lock my neck, somebody going to pull up with AR-15s and start shooting at the vehicle, because Tobago not on that level, or they haven't plummeted to those levels. So mentally and emotionally, the commute of Trinidadians vacationing in Tobago tend to be hinged to the fact that it's a safer place and a cheap vacation. So to take the pensioners and put them in a position now where they had to come up with money to commute back and forth, the alternative now is air travel. Air travel has gone to what by January we're looking at another increase. So it's going to be costing more money, $400, to get back and forth in terms of air transport. Let us say we take that out of the pensioners' hands. At least you could have left them with a nominal $25, or leave the increase leave it at nothing, leave it at they can use the boat. You and I both know not everybody could take boat. I dread having to sit on a boat. By the time I reach Scarborough, I need 4 hours to recover from the boat ride. I tried it at different times and different junctures in my life, telling myself that maybe I'd get accustomed, my body might acclimatize differently, but it hasn't. The little that the pensioners have now is being taken away. So what are they getting in return? Is it that they're going to, the next thing is that they may not get any sort of compensatory benefit locally, because we're talking about freezing their pensions, we're talking about increasing the age of retirement for people under the according to what the National Insurance Board, their trust is moving forward. So we can only project hardship. As you get older in this country, things are going to get tougher. It's not going to get easier. That's the trajectory that we're on.
Things are getting tougher from today. Things have been getting tougher from before, and it will continue to head in that direction, and that will continue to be the trajectory once the leadership of the country today remains as it is going into the future. You must reach a point when you can say, this is not working. This is not working. It's not good for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That is not hard. This is not anything about anybody. It's not about personalities. I've made the point before. I don't know that the Prime Minister has an MBA. I don't know that the Prime Minister has a degree in economics. I don't know that the Prime Minister has a degree in law. One of those 3 degrees must be relevant to leading a country. And I don't, from what I learned, I have no information to inform me that he has any of those degrees. And I will think to be a Prime Minister, he must have one of those. And that could be a big part of the problem.
Patrick Manning is a geologist and things weren't managed in that way?
Well, let me tell you what's the difference. Patrick Manning studied Eric Williams, and he used to say it all the time. Eric Williams, the father of the nation, visionary leader. Manning worked with him under many ministries, and he supported Eric Williams so that when he became leader, Manning's vision and how we came to love Patrick Manning wasn't just Manning by himself, Manning was groomed by Eric Williams. Not that Eric Williams put him in a corner and say, I'll be a mentor and I'll mentor you or anything like that. It's that Patrick put in the work. He knew if leadership had ever fallen to him, he wanted to do it the way Eric Williams was doing it. And when he got the opportunity, he put his shoulder to the wheel and he worked. Patrick came in with a vision and he learned, how do you learn management, economics, or law? As Denzel Washington said, and when he was given a speech in a graduation ceremony, I think to the University of Pennsylvania in front of thousands of people. He said, if you hang around barbers long enough, you're sure to get a haircut. Well, equally, if you line with someone who is successful or successful people, but you don't know anything about investing or anything, eventually you would learn how to invest. If you hang around criminals, but you weren't a criminal, eventually you're going to find comfort. Or at least no discomfort with criminal activities because your friends doing it. Some of it will rub off on you. But this Prime Minister, we have no evidence of him doing that under Patrick Manning. The evidence we have on the contrary, he fought him. So he never really took the time to learn what Patrick was doing and learn from Patrick what Patrick learned from Eric Williams. So he probably saw it and feel, well, I'm a PhD. He always said it on the platform too. And he's an undergraduate degree holder in geology, and I'm a PhD. So that if you could do so good, he was saying, imagine how much better I could do if I got in. Well, I supported him and to get in 2015 as Prime Minister, and I begged Patrick not to remove him when Patrick was bent on removing him in 2010. And Darian Marcel could attest to that, Harvey Boris could attest to that. I begged Patrick Manning to save this guy. And he was saved. And he got the job in 2015 to be Prime Minister of the country. And I thought I was going to see, the first disappointment I had was his first response to the budget when he became opposition leader. His first response to the budget. I was expecting to hear and see intellectual presentation, intellectualism, the likes I'd never seen before. On the contrary, for the first time I saw him with the glasses, and he was stuttering. And I mean, I was saying, well, this doesn't look good, you know. I thought, we were putting in the real deal. I wanted to see PhD work, on demonstration because he was making that point all the time. Sadly, I didn't see it. And way back then, if you'll go and pull that back up, his first response as opposition leader to the budget, it was the most disappointing one. Nobody ever spoke about it. That's the thing. Because there was nothing to talk about, right? So that was a signal to me then. Then he became Prime Minister in 2015. We fought hard to make that happen for him. And then again, the shortages from not studying Patrick Manning, from not studying the work of Eric Williams, from not studying how political leaders in the PNM did it before and how they move forward and how they help the people. What you saw, first of all, was a huge degree of lack of preparedness for the job. And he was all over the place signing his own book that he put out instead of staying and playing golf here. He couldn't even settle down. You'll go back and think about it. It felt to Colin Byrd to start off as the Prime Minister in 2015. And then he worked his way into it. And thereafter, nothing moved, nothing changed, nothing has happened. So I am saying part of the explanation for that, not studying under Patrick, not studying what I get from Patrick that Patrick got from Eric Williams, and not having a law degree, not having a management degree, not having an economics degree. You are telling me we have someone now, if you go to discuss economics, somebody had to almost lecture to you what economics is about first, before you can begin to understand and then apply what they're telling you to apply. Then if it takes a legal turn and whatever, you have to get somebody to lecture to you first so that you can begin to understand, and after you understand, you can begin to apply. And when it comes to managing the affairs of the state, you have to listen to people now to help you understand what is management before you can understand it, before you can apply it. I mean, so he's this is what I said earlier on. I wouldn't be surprised if he had only gotten or come to realize what was in the budget after it was presented. He didn't come across when they interviewed him to me as though he was someone or some Manning would speak, about we did this and this is why this was here for that reason and so on and so on. Patrick argued before with one or two of his finance ministers. He said, no, I had to to interject myself into it, because where they were going with that, the small man would have suffered, and I had to step in and say, no, do it, but don't touch this. I've never seen that or heard that coming from this. Colm Imbert is given a free hand, it appears like, to do whatever he could. And the reason why he can do whatever he could is because Colm is extremely bright, and he's bright enough to know perhaps his supervisor is not properly prepared to adequately supervise him as he ought to be supervised. So Colm has total free reign. And that's why I said this budget to me came across like an IMF budget to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It's like the IMF did this budget and give it to Colm to present. I'm not saying that's what happened. It came across as if that is what was done, The budget is that terrible to the people of this country. And I don't think the Prime Minister could have done anything to help change it. I believe he still has the opportunity right now to take the side of the people and say, hey, none of it would help him. I think we need to review some of these measures because it ain't gonna work for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. On the contrary, he tried to defend it. But look, before you ask me the question, you have come across anyone whom you spoke to off the set who told you the budget was a good one for it?
No, none at all.
There you go. Neither me. This is the worst budget I have ever heard since I'm dealing in politics and current affairs issues. This is the worst one. After we just had a windfall, according to Richard Quest. This is shocking stuff. But sorry, go on.
The tone of the Prime Minister seems to resonate with the fact that this is a cabinet position on the budget. You seem to be insinuating that the Prime Minister seems to be dictating the policies here and not the cabinet. The sort of politics that we have in this country that we practice, our style of politics has been cabinet-led decision making. The Prime Minister is the voice of his cabinet. Are you of the view that this may be a one-man show and the cabinet is just Trump and following suit?
The cabinet, I believe I could be wrong. It's just my belief. I believe that, for example, the other day he commended the cabinet for participating in something as it relates to taking care of the old buildings, you know that? And he thanked the cabinet for the support. I'm in politics long enough. When you're thanking a cabinet like that often from the history, you're really telling the cabinet, continue to stay quiet and just support what I say. And then I'll come out and tell people you had something to do with it. Stay in your corner, bat in your crease. That is what was being done there. But what cabinet he thanking for supporting him? What cabinet? Let one of them, Lee Hunt, wanted to put pipe. You want to put meters on pipe. Meters there on pipe. So that people could pay what they use. Which Lee Hunt was right. And I understand that Lee Hunt was right. And why I'm saying Lee Hunt was right is that the meters, and Father Faris Al-Rari shared with us the other night, the insensitivity that is being extended to the people from the Prime Minister. Faris told the country the other night, Faris Al-Rari on TV6 told the nation the other night that, you hear me?
Yeah.
That the Prime Minister said with the Lee Hunt matter, you cannot meter dry taps. So no metering. Now what that meant, Faris didn't understand what he was saying. What that meant was he was also saying, if he didn't know, is that he was saying, if he didn't know that is what he was saying, he was also saying that the Prime Minister was open to charging people for water who didn't get. Because not to put the meter on the line means everybody who not getting water and was not receiving any water for a long time, they still getting a bill and had to pay. But when you put the meter on it, the meter would be able to reveal. You can't charge these people who have not been receiving water because the meter revealed they received no water. Yeah. You understand that? So you fired Lee Hunt. You accepted his resignation because Lee Hunt wanted to do the right thing. Lee Hunt wanted not to charge people who were not receiving water, but to charge those who were receiving and let them pay a fair rate. But you said, no. We're making more money this way. In other words, that's my interpretation. You can't meter dry taps. Leave it so. But you can charge dry taps though. That's what happening, you know. You're charging dry taps. You're charging that. And who's suffering that? Is it the rich people today who are dry taps? No, it's the poor man. And even after receiving no water, you're telling the poor man you have to pay $100 a month still. That is wickedness, Fareed. That is the definition of wickedness.
My concern is this. The reason why it is the PNM and the central government as it exists now can operate in the manner that it can is because it feels that they have sufficient elbow room politically in parliament where they could act as they wish because there's a lack of a proper opposition or an opposition that could really serve as a genuine oversight body on the activity. That's just my view. In other words, as long as the UNC in its current format exists as it exists, there is no direct challenge or direct alternative available to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and PNM will continue to prevail, and its policies as it exists and subsists now will continue to shine high. I want to switch the narrative, just nuance it just a little bit. We were looking at what happened because you referenced the situation as it presented itself in Tobago, the 14-1 turn over the last couple months into a year. The PDP and the THA led the PDP led THA spent about 9 months in control of Tobago affairs. But what we have seen now is a fall off between the chief sec and the leader of the PDP. When Fort James stepped forward and he said, this is a problem that was in the pipeline for some time. When Fort James came out and said, no other place in the world, barring a French example, has there been a situation where the leader of the party doesn't assume control. In other words, you can't have a person who is head of the PDP, the party in power, and then you have a chief sec who is not the same person. So in other words, you have two individuals, the head of the PDP, Watson Duke, and the chief sec, Farley Augustine. These two men have found themselves in a position where philosophically they at loggerheads. Farley has assumed control of the THA as the chief exec, as the chief secretary. He's leading an executive. They're on a drive to do things differently in Tobago. But when you have the head of the PDP, the leader of the party, because they came into power under the flagship of the People's Democratic Party, right? So the PDP's position is basically, I'm saying Democratic Progressive Party. The position is that they're looking under that flagship. They came into power. They assume leadership. So where we are now with the Tobago politics is, we were hopeful that the PDP, this progressive party, would have entered into the national politics now and provided some sort of an alternative, and if not an alternative, a challenge to the minds of the PNM, an alternative that they figure could possibly, given the trend that started in Tobago, could possibly challenge them in the national politics and may very well serve as a necessary oversight to say, you know what, the PDP gaining ground on us. We have to be careful where we're going in this national politics. Duke and Farley may present themselves as young, viable minds, particularly Farley as a leader. And therefore, our position may be that we need to align our policies and set standards and pass legislation and to actually foster on the people that, you know, we are the better of the alternatives. What is your position in terms of this fall off between Duke and Farley at this point in time? Do you see this situation between Farley and Duke settling down and the PDP serving as a viable alternative, or you're seeing this as a falling off?
I see it as an adjustment period, Fareed. The people of Tobago took what we could consider to be a daring decision. Daring because they took a chance with a party that had no track record. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, they were saying, we have to do something differently. We don't know what the outcome would be, so we're staying into the future without any guidance. We don't know what will happen, but what we do know, we had to do something differently. And they did it. And you had to commend them for taking that courageous decision. And I would continue to commend the people at Tobago for that. And what you find now is that they are going through an adjusting period. You notice how quiet the people of Tobago are? My family have informed me through the pumpkin vine way how they talk over the fence, is that what they're saying to each other over the fence now, neighbors, is that I'll give them some time, they will thaw out, let it settle down. They're new to this kind of office, they're new to power, they're new to leading a country, they're new to leading the island. It's not a country, some of them that say that, right? But the people in Tobago believe this is going to settle down. And even if the two leaders in differences may be so many that they can be viewed as irreconcilable, what would happen is that the people of Tobago, based on what is happening over the fence, will pull them to settle down, because for any one of them to really continue along this line, they would need a base support. But the people of Tobago seem not to be getting involved and not supporting either side per se. So what they're saying, in other words, is that we want both of you. We want both of you. You'll settle down for the good of Tobago and lead this country. So to me, it's a norming and storming, adjusting period that they are going through. And the time will come not too long from now where they will gel one way or another. They will gel, meaning they reconcile the differences and start working together, or they would gel being bitter enemies, but they would respect each other's position on behalf of the people of Tobago and for the advancement of Tobago. So one way or another, it's going to work out. So to me, it's good, it's healthy, because it needed to play itself out. Farley would have always been in the shadows, so to speak, as a chief secretary who was just like a chief secretary who was not a full chief secretary, because everybody would have been looking at Duke as the real man, right? So that always been a problem for Farley as he tried to implement policies and lead Tobago, because Tobago is in need of leadership. And Duke being over him would have always been that shadow kind of blurring the vision and appearance of what should be taking place. So what has happened now, it has put Farley in clear air. Today we can say Farley is genuinely now the chief secretary. Whatever happens now, we know it is at Farley's making and his hands. Duke, on the other hand, I say it was good to happen because Duke would need to know where he is in the politics, even within his party, if he should continue in politics, and if so, how to continue. So he now had to take some different decisions depending on where he wants to go in relation to the future. So it's going to play itself out, and I don't see any major there. If they continue to fight, though, us in the PNM, I'll tell you this, we always said, because I didn't join the party to support Dr. Rowley. I supported Dr. Rowley, having been a member of the PNM and remain a member of the PNM. And Dr. Rowley will not cause me to leave the PNM. So I'm a full-blown PNM, although some of them in the PNM does like to look at you and say, he's a PNM and she's a PNM in disdainful tones. I have heard them behind, So some of them claim in high office they're PNM. They are not really PNM, I've listened to them. They tell you this one with his PNM nonsense and his PNM this and his PNM that. Making it sound like, same PNM people, making it sound like PNM is a bad thing. So I listen to them and I'm saying here today, I'm a PNM. Not the PNM, all the thing PNM is. I'm a PNM because I chose as a free man to join the PNM. The PNM wasn't forced on me. I took a free decision to join the PNM. And I remain a PNM today. And this is why I'm making the point. I would not leave the PNM for an individual, and I didn't join it for an individual. So us in the PNM, looking at what's happening in Tobago Ferry, it is not at all disappointing to us, though. I have given genuine and fair commentary from what you asked me. But politically, if they can't settle down, if they can't reconcile the difference, and if they can't offer the people in Tobago who took a chance on them a type of leadership and governance to please the people, I want to say to Duke, Farley, and the people of Tobago, we in the PNM remain ready, set, and able to pick up the reins again. We have done some things not in the best way that caused them to turn away from us, and we would look at those things we would reset and we'll come again and we'll try to do better than we did before. But one thing they know they could always get from us in the PNM is stable government. And that is what we will do. In Trinidad and Tobago at the highest level, I could say, we don't have that what we know the PNM has always been capable of. We do not have that now. That doesn't even really resemble what Patrick Manning did as a prime minister, what Chambers did as a prime minister, and certainly, it cannot even begin to be compared. You can't even entertain that thought to what Eric Williams did with the PNM and for the country with the PNM in office. So this is what we are witnessing now. At some point in time, something strange and unexplainable will emerge as we go forward. Us in the PNM today, we may be pondering and trying to grapple with how we have ended up being where we are now and why this has happened. So it's something we had to fix. It's something we had to fix too. But that is my response to what you asked for in relation to the Tobago situation, but to let people know it's not hopeless. They have governance now, and they have governance waiting to lead the country, the island forward.
You see, I hear you on that. And my concern about Tobago is this. The issues that are manifesting itself, the fissures in the relationship between Duke and Fally Augustine, these fissures should have been sealed, and it should have been ironed out, and it should have been cast over. They should have sat behind closed doors and have open discussions, and they could have gotten to the levels of theatrical violence or figurative violence between each other behind closed doors, and then come to a common ground. I don't like how this played out in the newspaper, through the media, in any form of newsprint. The narrative being carried through social media doesn't sell well. We're looking at a situation where Duke resigns as the deputy chief sec. We are seeing where he removed Fally from the executive of the PDP. So a situation where the Progressive Democratic Patriots has disassociated itself with the chief sec. We have Fally responding to the social media video that was put out, the press conference that Duke had, accusing Fally of being another PNM in Tobago and accusing him of corruption, of nepotism, of not favoring local contractors and creating jobs and employment for Tobago people. Fally responds with a pre-action letter. So when we speak about, you figure, we are of the view that these two guys would sit down and things would settle down. When men start turning to lawyers and lawyers start to speak on behalf of an individual, that's a sign that we're not getting along, and I don't want to talk to you and you can't talk to me, so deal with my lawyer.
No, what the two options I gave him, Farid, was if that doesn't work out, and you're right, from the time you put a lawyer in the mix, I think that lawyer would widen the divide. I think so, right? But that was not the only way of reconciliation. It's a different type, which you may not be able to refer to as reconciliation, but definitely a settling down conclusion, which would be, is either they reconcile and they come back as one and operate together, or they separate but both of them work with Tobago's interests in mind and heart, because the Tobagonians who put them there. And that's why I made the point that the Tobagonian people have stayed out of it, which what is happening over the fence is which is telling. They're saying for now, we're still giving both men an opportunity to lead this island. I told you what my family said in Tobago, that the discussion is that these two fellas have never led anything like this before. So it's new to them. You've seen some newness taking place. That's how the people at Tobago interpret it. And it will take them some time to become like a Ho Choi Charles or a London or a London who've been, you know what I mean? So you can settle down and you know what you need to know and that type of thing. Both of them very new to the role they had to play now. So time would help position them. And I tell you, give it 90 days again. Duke would assume his position, whatever position that is, and Fali would assume his own, and the back and forth will drop, and then you'll see Tobago being governed going forward. What will play out though is that the next election, a third party, well, a fourth party might, well, in Tobago there were two, so a third party might jump in the arena now, and I can tell you, we in the PNM would be, we wouldn't be sad not at all, I must say that. We stayed out of what happened in Tobago, but what is happening if a third party emerges, it spells good news for us in the future. And the youngest person in Tobago in politics know that too. So, I mean, and we are not doing any wrong. We want to serve to that people in Tobago wanted us to stay on, you know.
Yeah.
All the people who voted for the PNM in Tobago wanted PNM to stay on. And they may still be there asking the PNM to do so. And if a third party comes and the vote is divided up, and we run in what we do run, which is first past the post system under our democratic system. Once you end up with the majority, you have the right to continue or to resume leadership of the island. And I want to let them know we stand ready, willing, and able to do just that. Tobago will not suffer.
I am hopeful that your view could prevail, but I'm not seeing the empirical data on the ground carrying that dialogue. Fali made an overture. He said to Duke that he's going to review his position as Deputy Chief Sec. I think Duke smell, as you know, we see on the street, you smell a rat or you see something boiling in the horizon. And rather than wait and be removed, he took in front and resigned. Now, when he's saying that the people's, well, basically the PDP, the PDP is who the people on the ground voted for. The people didn't vote for Fali. He said that the Duke is saying that the PDP showed as far back as 2013 into 2016 that it could survive the test of time. He went so far, they're talking things that would have been conversations, they're revealing conversation that would have been carried behind closed doors. When he said he approached Fali and to enter into the politics, and Fali was open to that. He wanted to use Fali as you know, he will be the chief secretary if they achieve the objectives. That was achieved. But in terms of the dialogue between them, it seemed to have plummeted pretty quickly. By the time the editorial in the newspaper and the media started to carry the fall off, or the narrative of the fall off, it seemed that things had plummeted to such a degree there were big cleavages between men. You know, I often say that this whole story about the Roxborough folk performers going and all the THA provided was $400,000 in airfare and to cover some minimal and nominal expenses. That seemed to be just the flagship of the argument. There had to have been much more that lay behind that and lay under the skin of that, the epidermis of that argument. The Sophia Angus, Denise Sophia Angus, she came out and she said that under the PNM, and bear in mind she's quoting what happened under the PNM when she was there. She is no longer under the flagship of the PNM, but she's saying that there were policies in place in Orwell London's time. When it is groups wanted to travel and they wanted assistance, they must show that they have a certain level of funding, that they must demonstrate that the project that they're going on, in terms of, this was a case where they were going to perform in New York, that it was going to be the benefit of Tobago, that it was, what was the objectives of that group. There must be some approval on some level. And then if it is you're approaching the THA, then you're approaching the THA for bridging finance, to say, well, we have X amount of dollars and we're trying to get to a certain level and we're seeking assistance. You're not seeking sponsorship where they're going to assume every sinecure of expense, every layer of expense. In other words, you can't expect the THA, under Orwell London-led THA, to you cannot expect them to sponsor folk performers to go somewhere, sponsor a private organization to go on a trip fully. In other words, there are standards, there's a policy in place. What we seem to be seeing is that Duke is saying these people were left hungry to starve on the streets of New York. I guess that's the trade union man in him there speaking. They were left to starve in New York. Basically, what he was saying is that airfare and nominal expenses wasn't enough. Farley responded and said that they could only do so much. The monies that they were seeking, remember, the THA still waiting on financing from central government. They don't have cash in hand to just spend wildly on any and everything. So what the need so far, Angus is saying, is that we haven't had the details as to policy-wise how it is the Roxborough folk performers approach the TSA, whether they were following the correct approach. Duke responds and says it doesn't matter what approach took place. The fact that you offered $400,000 and you provided airfare travel and you provided nominal expenses means to say that you've accepted them. You've almost blessed the project that they're on, blessed the exercise, because I guess what he was saying indirectly is if it is we were to spend $2, it means to say we were on board with what they were doing. What you ought to say, we ain't getting all in nothing because we don't recognize you all and we're not endorsing the exercise you're going on. So therefore, simply by providing the nominal airfare, what you've done is you've sanctioned what the exercise they're on. So therefore, you've already incorporated yourself on the exercise that they are on. So to not provide the additional expenditure, it seems that Duke is saying that is the horse has already bought the stable. So Duke's position is the way the Roxborough folk performers were treated is synonymous with the fact that Farley is uncaring, or the Farley-led executive is uncaring. Farley is saying quite the contrary. So it's a pity that the Roxborough folk performers now have become synonymous with this sort of controversy. I mean, this is not how they would like their names to be projected. They want to be remembered for the job they do as a performing entity, not to be the subject of controversy and the flagship that brought a divide between. And I don't believe that is what brought the divide between Duke and Farley.
I think that was trying to be used as a trigger for the divide. Yeah, it was something else.
Right. Now, having said all of that, this is where we are. Ansel Dennis comes out and he says that you all are alluding to the fact that the audit report, a 90-page audit report from the Caribbean Institute of Forensic Auditing, reflects how $206 million was spent on 80 roads and 21 roads, which is what they were looking at. 21 roads, which is a random examination of the 80 road project. 21 roads, 11 of them carry certificate of completions, and of the 11, when he examined the 11, people got certificates of completion for roads that the project hasn't been started on. So Farley is saying that he's going to the police, he's turning to the TTPS at some point when it is the audit reports have all come in. And he wants to know how certificates of completion could be administered on roads that the project hasn't even started on, or the projects haven't been completed yet. There are certificates of completion. The very notion of a certificate of completion is that this project is finished. We get a certificate of completion to show what it's done with. We've achieved our objective, and we're moving to the next step. How could the cart lead the horse? How could you get a certificate of completion and the project hasn't even started? Then it's flashback, and he's saying that also. What about the other 4 reports? We only get 1 of the 5. So Farley is saying, well, I gave a commitment in July, by September, we'd have the reports on the table. 1 is ready, so we present that. One is left to wonder. If it is the initial report is pointing in a direction of corruption, in a direction of contractors favored by PNM-led THA, received projects, contracts, there was no proper tendering process. Dennis lashes back now. He's saying the $309 million that is being spent on preparing roads for the Carnival in October, that when you look at the people who were allocated the contracts, The bulk of the contracts were given to Trinidad contractors, not Tobago contractors. And Dennis started quote statistics. He's saying that when he looks at a project, a $54 million project, roadworks, began in Crown Point. And he's saying that when he examines who got the contract, he's talking in very open language. He's saying someone in Penal, Trinidad got the project. He went on to say that there's a $25 million contract in Kings Peters Bay Road. Again, a Trini contractor got it. He's quoting statistics to go on and say that when we examine another contract that was granted in relation to Argyle, a $40 million contract, Trini contractors got it. Dutch Fort, $75 million contract, Trini contractors got it. So he's asking, he's throwing it back at them. What was the tendering process for that $309 million that you all just set aside to get roads up and ready for the October Carnival? He's saying you're accusing the PNM of spending $300 million in 6 months leading into the election. When he's saying that Fali was being disingenuous, that the $300 million was spent over a period of 2 years. So what we're seeing in Tobago, what we're seeing panning off in Tobago is what Duke seems to be holding on to. Duke is feeding on that frenzy. He's feeding on the information that is in the public space, that this THA led by Fali Augustine isn't much different and isn't operating much different from the THA led PNM that he criticized. And I don't know, from what you're saying, it doesn't seem to be building on the ground in terms of Duke doesn't seem to be getting the traction that he wanted in terms of people recognizing that Fali isn't doing the job that he ought to do. Duke seems to be selling to the people that he wants to step out of this thing now, 9 months into the Fali-led or Fali and Friends-led executive, and expose them, because if it is he doesn't do it, then his name will fall under the same wrath. So he wants to say, you know what, this is what I'm noticing happening. He's using the same sort of data that Ansel Dennis is putting into the public space. So he doesn't want to say he's creating stats. He's using the public stats and saying, listen, this is what is in the public space. So if Ali wants to show that he is not following proper oversight policies, then he must explain how come contractors from Trinidad is getting all of this and what was the tendering process. It comes back to where we were. Had the procurement legislation been passed into existence, we might be dealing with this kind of thing.
But here was the thing, Farid. Both parties right, and again, Tobago is going through something good. Let me start with the best part first. Now, because you have different people leading Tobago, different questions could now be asked and answered. And therefore, the people of Tobago will get a more truthful picture. And the gentleman who led the THA, I forget his name, I just call it, Ansel Dennis.
Yeah.
From the outside firing, he now had to defend what they did, but and you know, in a way to please the people of Tobago. What is good about that is anything that may have been hidden could now potentially land on the table for open conversation in front of the people of Tobago, which could become a major deterrent in the future for whoever is in not to go down those routes. You understand that? So that is good. That's a very good thing that Tobago is going through. And we need to go through that as a country. Soon, when we change the leadership of the party and the government, one of those new ladies would have to look into what was done in CL Financial, what was done with Petrotrin, what was done in many other areas, the lake asphalt and all these things, get commissions of inquiry and table them so the people of Trinidad and Tobago would know what really happened. And if for some reason it's not this administration and the next one gets in, then the same thing happening in Tobago would happen now, and the people of Trinidad and Tobago would only be better off for it. We'll become wiser for it. So right therein lies a huge benefit for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But when you look at the part of the contract, you are telling me, and I've heard it too, that there was a certificate of completion, which is saying that, hey, I am certifying that I have seen this work because somebody had to do it, and I am
Yes.
satisfied that this job has been done, and therefore I will go forward and so certify that this has been done. The police had to get involved. Fali is right. Is Fali going to the police on that, right?
Well, he's saying he's going that the audit report is
Right.
complete. That's
So,
a legal
and
document.
I want to say, Fali, you have my full support. How someone could certify the completion of something even before the something begins? How could something be deemed to be finished before it starts? So Fali is doing the correct thing. Go to the police and assist the police so the police could answer that for you and tell if there is a new definition of completing work. We all stand to hear what the conclusion of that would be. Like, but that is necessary. You can't have that going forward and being left unchecked. Those are the types of ills that people do in office that results in denying people milk, sugar, flour, beds, medication, and those things in the hospital, and that could help improve their lives. Why would somebody certify something as being finished when the thing has not even started? Who did it? Why they did it? Who told them to do it? That must be looked into and must be checked out. You can't say, well, they tell me and they send the form and I just sign it. Well, then they didn't do your job. But they may well do that because that might come across as an explanation for the huge, terrible thing that was done and make it look like you were just slack. But with deeper investigation, it may reveal something more than that. And now that we don't know who it is, I want to say here, since we don't know who it is, I will not be surprised if that turns out to be a major corrupt act. And the police must help us to discover who that is as we go forward. That is what you call wrongdoing, and wrongdoing in office.
You know, I like to look at the law. I was looking at the Tobago House of Assembly Act, right? Act number 17 of 2006. When we look at section 16, and I'm purely looking at the act because there is something in the public space now where it was raised that when Duke resigned as the deputy chief sec, Duke resigned and addressed the letter of resignation to Fali Augustine.
Yeah.
What came into the public space is simply this, and this is what the law indicated. The law speaks to if you have to resign in a position like that, you need to forward your resignation to the President of the Republic, the person who appointed you. So the lawyers got involved again. They were saying that his resignation, the legality of Duke's resignation came into question, that you cannot resign in the manner that he resigned. So doing a press conference and say, well, I've submitted my resignation. I'm no longer part of Fali and Friends. I'm no longer part of the executive. So I don't have to get into no petty fight with no little boy. That was his language. That I brought newbie Fali Augustine into the politics. I am not going to fight with him. I am resigning. I'm giving up my position in the executive. But the letter of resignation was addressed to Fali, not the president. The president appointed you. So if it is he resigned, I send in a resignation and tell Fali that I done, I out. The president can't act on that resignation letter. That resignation letter should be directed to the person who appointed you. Lo and behold, Faith Israeli, her position is she was given, but she went through the formality of replacing him as deputy chief sec. So one would imagine that a proper resignation was eventually now it's a presumption. A proper resignation was eventually placed on record in terms of Duke would have addressed it to the president. No narrative in the newspaper. This is where I am. No narrative in the newsprint or in the media has carried that the proper resignation process has been engaged. What is being carried in the newspaper is that Duke's lawyer from a particular law firm in South Trinidad forwarded correspondence and placed it in the public space that this resignation wasn't a proper resignation. It wasn't followed in the proper fashion. It wasn't done legally in the way it ought to be done. In other words, him saying that he was resigning and addressing it to Fali cannot be treated as a legitimate form of handing over I wouldn't say the reins of power, but the position as deputy chief sec. So therefore, how could Fali now talk about he's going to convene a meeting and they're going to put in on record that Faith Israeli or anybody is going to be thereby nominated into the position. Having said that, let's look at the legislation. Before we go there, we have to look at, this is power play at its highest level. We at least could agree on that. There is a certain amount of, there's a fall off between these two men. One is stating that I am your father in politics in terms of I brought you in to the politics. The PDP pre-existed you. You were nothing before the PDP existed. The PDP gave you a voice. It gave you a platform. You have now assumed executive office under the umbrella of the PDP, and now you're operating as if you're bigger than the party. So it's a question of who is leading Fali. Is it that the PDP has some say in terms of his mandate? Should he be operating as a member of the PDP even when he's chief sec, or has he shed the skins of or removed the umbrella of the PDP, and now as chief sec he is doing what he's let down his garb as a politician in terms of his PDP status, and is running things in the name of Tobago as chief sec. So that little nuance there between being a member of the PDP and being chief sec, that clearly wasn't tweaked. These two men didn't really have a clear position in terms of their relationship as to whether, when you assume the position as chief sec, how much you're going to divest yourself of a political robe and assume the position of chief sec, and then not having resolved that issue between them. Fali seemed to have resolved it and tell him, well, you know, basically I am the chief sec here. You are the leader of a party. You have kicked me out in terms of remove me from the executive, but at the end of the day, real power lies with me. What the public needs to understand is who is really the chief sec. I want to look at section 16(1) of the Tobago House of Assembly.
Before you do it, because I know you're running out of time, but before you do it, that part that you raised before with the validity of the resignation is a good one. But it would have to be accepted as a valid resignation, because it seemed to have not been taken up by an attorney going to court where the court could adjudicate on it.
Yes.
And I don't think that Mr. Duke has in any way at all tried to give that side of it life, because life flowing from it would have to flow from Mr. Duke. He said with his own mouth he resigned, and he's not going to fight one man. He don't do that. He fighting systems and government now for the people, which is a bigger cause. That's admirable. Yeah. So which means he's not going back to say, well, I resigned, but check to see if I did it properly. And if I didn't do it properly, perhaps I didn't resign and I'm still the deputy chief secretary. What he did, nonetheless, is that he served his intention about the outcome he wanted to produce. He has now produced that outcome. Even if Faith B. Israel, if that's the name, who was elected as deputy chief secretary, was not done properly, it would have to stand now as legitimate and good law going forward, simply because there's no one to challenge it. How would it get before the court now? And until it gets before the court, it's valid. It would have to continue that vein. Yeah.
I agree with you. What I'm concerned about is when it is the media carry certain things and they carry a certain narrative, the narrative has never carried to its fullest length. We ought to have had in the public space that notion that the resignation wasn't properly handled, treated with. Because we are left to presume that the president wouldn't get her hands dirty. She wouldn't act on replacing Mr. Deputy Chief Sec, Mr. Duke, unless it is she herself, a legal mind, would have done the necessary oversight or ensure that when they approached her, that everything was done in a proper and legal fashion. But you know, this power play, we need to examine, why do people fight to be chief sec, and why do people assume these positions? When we look at the 16.1 talks about of the Tobago House of Assembly Act, it says that the salary, allowances, and other conditions of service of the chief sec shall be equal to that of a minister. Minister meaning minister of government, except that the state shall provide the chief sec with the following. And 16.1a says an official residence in lieu of a housing allowance. So let us say Fali is living in the official residence. He would not be entitled to a housing allowance. An official car in lieu of a traveling allowance, and appropriate security services. So the position of chief sec is a powerful position in Tobago. You're working at the level
Prime Minister.
Yeah, you're working on the level where you holding a ministerial salary. You're holding a ministerial salary with an official residence if you choose to have one, an official car, and we ain't talking about no Japanese soft shell car.
No, we talking about, and with outriders too, you know, police and thing, protection for the chief sec. Yeah. But I know, you know, just to remind you, we have about 3 more minutes to go. So I'll wait to take the 3 minutes and conclude first, Farid, because they have commitments at 6 o'clock sharp.
Yeah.
I don't want them pulling the plug and you know I finish. So I pulling myself out and giving you the opportunity to conclude.
Yeah. I think we are living in interesting times in Trinidad and Tobago, and I would hope that Mr. Augustine and Mr. Duke find some sort of common ground. Despite the fact that much has happened, we cannot have an executive that doesn't have a mandate from the people. The mandate from the people of Tobago came under the umbrella of the people of the PDP, right? So the Patriotic Democratic Party, they have been given the mandate by the people of Tobago to take control and lead the THA. What we've seen happen now is that there's a fall off between the PDP and the THA, and there needs to be more harmony, because we have another election and we have the PNM on the heels of this party, and Ansel Dennis, and they're not going to back down. So I'm hoping that futuristically, Richard and David, that egos don't prevail in Tobago, because if egos don't prevail in Tobago, then Tobago could move forward. Fali has said that what he's doing is that he is looking at autonomy for Tobago, and he's aligned himself with Ho Choi Charles. I'm not too sure if it is that pleases Mr. Duke. He's saying that he's seeking guidance from the older heads. Fali's a young man. Things are being put in the public space, and hurtful words are being thrown out there. Mr. Augustine seems to be throwing it at Mr. Duke that he's no stranger to the criminal court, that he's a convicted man, in relation to you know, that incident where they said they pulled a bell in one of the public spaces, that, and under the Fire Services Act and so on, you ought not to have done that. So he breached a minor offense, convicted for that. And then he's throwing.
We have 1 minute to go.
Yeah, one very ugly thing that he's throwing out there about the matter that's pending before the court. So in closing, with all these things, the synergy between these two men should improve. And if it doesn't improve, I hope Ho Choi Charles and the elders in Tobago, Winford James, and they get involved and help bring to closure this fiasco that's manifesting itself in Tobago, because we may not have an alternative, a third party, for the general election in 2025. All
right. Thank you, Farid. Great show. I enjoyed it. Let's do some more of the same topic next week. I don't know if we have a few more seconds. We do. We have about 23 more seconds. What's the murder toll?
You're asking that, brother. We reach.
No, we had to discuss that some more, because it really looked like we headed into almost 600. You know, it seems as though we could be heading there, and I want to tell you that's another stain on the leadership and quality of governance of the country at this time that we must address. Farid, thank you for a great show. We must look into that next time and continue with some of this. We had to continue with the budget, many more angles to go. Until next week, great show. Take it easy.
Let's take care.
Thank you, gentlemen. Near the top with Dennis James.
And lyrics wrong, make don't study what we singing in the song. All right.